I hope that everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day Sunday and that you all enjoyed your Sunday with your mothers. Remember, you only have one mother, and it's important to always show your appreciations to your mother every and each year. It's a very important thing. Always tell her that you love her, that you care, uh, because sometimes you might not get a second chance to do that. Life is short. Always let them know you love them. And I hope that everyone had a wonderful and blessed Mother's Day Sunday. All right, now moving on to this video. This video is something that's going to be a bit longer. What you're looking at here, it's a Black Hawk Down HDR via my Oppo UDP 4K UHD Blu-ray player, which is right over here. There it is, in case you guys are wondering. And the television you're looking at, it's E8 OLED 55 inch. Okay, so there's this thing that Oppo UDP 2 or 3 has. It's called stripped metadata HDR off and on. There's a button right here that you can press and you can switch between HDR off and on, and you can also switch between the resolution. You can turn off the resolution if you want. So pretty cool features. What I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to try to show you uh, exactly how much HDR dramatically improves a accurate tone of color that principal photography and film director intended the movie to look. Remember, every director has the vision, has the tone of color, and wants you to see the movie the way he envisioned the movie. Okay, so what I'm going to do on this video is I'm going to show you just how much HDR plays a huge key role, dramatic role in that movie experience, especially in the OLED. Okay, so currently what you're looking at, it's high dynamic range, and there's that cinematic tone and feel to it, you know, that chaotic tone of color, that chaotic, dramatic dramatization that Ridley Scott envisioned. This is based on real events that happened in Somalia in 1993, and it was a humanitarian aid help that went sour after the Black Hawk Down got crashed. I mean, it got shut down and crashed. Uh, so you guys can Google this and learn more about the Somalia incident and what happened in 1993 regarding the Black Hawk Down. When this happened, I was actually in Bosnia. I was trying to survive the current war that I was dealing with, and that was that uh, war between Bosnia and Serbia, the civil war that broke out there. So I was trying to endure that war during 1993, and that was a brutal experience, chaotic experience. And Ridley Scott really captured the essence of combat here. I think there's two movies. I would say Saving Private Ryan and The Black Hawk Down are these two movies that I would say even the military personnel would say probably the most accurate depiction on what the war actually does. All right, so let's move on. Sorry about me bragging, talking about this, and let's get on with it, shall we? All right, so as I said, you see everything in a natural tone of color that film director intended. This is Ridley Scott approval. He approves this tone of color and the way it looks. This is how he envisioned this movie to look, and HDR brings that vision. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and sorry about that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna strip away the HDR from this movie, and in about 3 seconds, I'm gonna turn off the HDR really quick, and you guys will see a drastic difference. You will see what happens when you strip away the HDR from a movie. Here we go. One, two, three. So currently the HDR it's turned on, and we're gonna turn it off. Right now the HDR it's turned off, and as you can see, everything looks bleak. Uh, you don't see that tone of color that Ridley Scott envisioned for this movie to represent the Black Hawk Down tone of vision. You know, he didn't want this movie to look as if it was shot with like documentary, clear, high definition camera. He wanted this movie to look a certain tone. Like I said, that's why I was talking about, why he wanted this movie to look a certain way. And this is where HDR comes in. So I want you guys to bear with me. There's a reason why this video is long, because I want to explain why the HDR is so important in the movies. And I hope you guys can learn something through this. Now, let's turn the HDR back on in about 3 seconds. One, two, three. There you go. HDR is turned back on. Um, and clearly, you can see that difference that I was talking about. Now you have that nice um, tone of color that Ridley Scott wanted you to have. Here's what happens when you strip it off. It just doesn't look the same. It just doesn't look the same. Look when you turn when you turn the HDR back on, look what happens. It's like night and day. It's like you're watching a different movie. Now you're seeing exactly the way the movie was meant to be seen. This is why the HDR plays a key role in movies. You know, it's not just the resolution. Sure, resolution helps enhance, and the higher bitrate helps enhance a better, picture. However, the HDR plays also a very key important role, if not the important role, in my opinion. Let's move on to another scene really quick. Like I said, I apologize for this video being long, but I think it's important that you watch this entire video to understand why HDR is so important. Because I know there's some of you out there who are still on the fence. I don't see a difference between the HDR and then non-HDR. Well, with this video, you will see that difference. Now, the same will apply in this scene as well. I'm just picking random scene from the movie. And the reason I went with this movie, because this is one example, a movie from 2001. And then the fact that it was filmed with 35 millimeter, and now it's being brought to a 4K format with HDR, and you can see just how much the HDR will play that important key role. So let me strip off the HDR metadata right now in about 3 seconds. One, two, three. I mean, look at this. It's like you're watching. It just looks god awful. But this is what we were watching when we didn't have HDR. When we were just watching it on DVD. We weren't getting the true director's vision. And this is what Ridley Scott talked about when he talked about the 4K and HDR and OLED. You know, you really weren't experiencing the movie the way he envisioned the movie to look. And this is where HDR come in. This is where HDR plays a huge role, guys. And there's a point why this video it's going to be close to half an hour, because I want you to understand why HDR is so important in the movies. Let's turn the HDR back on. Let's do it. I'm not going to count the seconds. I'm just going to turn it on. You're going to see the difference. You're going to see the HDR logo over there. Let me turn it back on. Clearly, you can see the difference. I mean, there's clearly a difference here. I mean, it's like night and day. I mean, it's very obvious. And the reason I'm filming in such a wide screen camera, because this movie it's in certain ratio that it's widescreen, so I want you guys to see it in a wider picture on the screen. So let's turn it off. Let's see just how badly it's going to look when we turn the HDR off. Let's just turn it off right now. I mean, it's just it looks god awful, right? I mean, really. I mean, if you'd never experienced HDR, for you, this is probably going to be something where you're going to think this is how the movie is filmed and this is how it is. But this is not what Ridley Scott wanted you to see. Okay? This is what Ridley Scott wanted you to see. This is exactly what he wanted you to see. The scope and the tone of color that he intended with this movie. He wants this movie to look this greenish orange type of a feel. And the HDR will do that. HDR will do that for you. Let's move on to a next scene. I will do this for the Alien as well. If you guys want me to do this for Alien in 2001 Space Odyssey, I can do this as well. Same thing with the Predator. I can do this as well just to show you just how much HDR plays. To me, I think the HDR is the most important part in the movie. Just my opinion. I can honestly, it's really difficult for me to watch a movie without HDR nowadays because I'm so used to HDR that I'm like, dude, I really can't watch a movie without HDR anymore. In my honest opinion. Let's move on to another scene. Now, the reason I chose this scene is because this scene is very specific. This is a scene where the Black Hawk, it's crashed, it's buried onto the sand, and you can clearly see the definition of the sand clearly the way it should be. The way the smoke it's coming out of it, the propeller and the scratches on the propeller, you can see it from the sand that's also scraping against it. You see such a great scope in detail, and you see the tone of color the way the Ridley Scott envisioned it. Now let's strip off this HDR. Let's turn it off and let's see what we're going to be getting. And let's look at what we were watching in past almost 20 years on DVD and Blu-ray and a cassette VHS. Some of you were still using a VHS cassette in 2001 and 2002. Let's see how it looks when we strip off the HDR. This is what you're getting when you turn off that HDR. Nothing looks accurate. The tone of color doesn't look accurate. Uh, and if you didn't know any better, if you didn't know any better, if you never experienced HDR, this would be acceptable to you. Because if you never experience anything better than what you already have, you don't know any different. And you think this is the way director envisioned the movie. This is how he wanted the movie to look. No. Even if I had Sir Ridley Scott sitting here with me, he would have told you the same thing. He would have said, bloody hell no. This is not how I wanted this movie to look. Like that. Let's turn the HDR back on and you will see the difference. This is what he wants you to see. I think it speaks for itself. I think you guys can see the difference. Even through this video, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. And I think this video it's important. I really hope that you guys watch these videos. Remember, everyone, I'm not doing these videos for me. Guys, I know what HDR can do. I know what Dolby Vision can do. I know the difference between all these different resolutions. I'm not doing this for me, guys. I'm doing this for you. For those of you who are still on the fence, for those of you who still are debating whether or not you should buy a 4K HDR television or whether or not you should purchase a 4K UHD Blu-ray disc, it's important that the industry continues with the 4K and HDR and Dolby Vision physical media, because you all know I'm a big supporter of physical media, and I think the best way for you to experience a movie it's on the physical media. I'm pretty sure anyone who is a movie lover, who loves movies, will agree with this statement. It's important that we preserve physical media. Okay? All right, let's move on. And of course, this is another great example of HDR here, and the tone of color that filmmaker intended. And when I turn off the HDR, you're gonna feel as if I really stripped it down, like I stripped everything away, like I pulled the curtains out, like I just stripped everything away, and that's how it's gonna feel. Here, let me position my camera a little bit better so you guys can see it. Um, and it's going to feel like that. It's gonna feel as if I have stripped this entire movie from its tone of color, the way the principal photography, the way director, film director envisioned it. Let's turn off the HDR. I mean, look at this. Now, again, for those of you who never seen HDR or never experienced HDR, for you, this will be acceptable. Same thing goes for the individuals who never tried virtual reality. If you never tried virtual reality, you don't know what it's like. What it's like flying in a plane. If you've never flown in a plane, then you don't know. What it's like being in a train, you don't know if you've never been in one. So it's all comes from, experiencing something, seeing something. Now, this is what we used to watch 20 years ago on a DVD, cassette, VHS cassette, laser disc, and then of course Blu-ray later on. And this was acceptable. This is what we thought. Well, this is how Ridley Scott, wants this movie to look. He wants it to look this way. Not really. He did not want this movie to look this way. It's just that back then technology did not allow the home entertainment, the home, home theater, home cinema experience didn't allow you to experience exactly what was available in the movie theaters. So let's turn the HDR back on. Oh, look at that. Well, look at that. What a difference it makes. But you're going to say, but what is it that the HDR does? Well, HDR preserves a wider color gamut. It brings a wider color gamut, so therefore you get to see the color and the tone that was presented on that movie or on that content the way it was meant to be. Also, it enhances the digital black levels and the white digital levels as well. And it gives a much better contrast on top of the color gamut. It's really three things. It's a color gamut, peak brightness, and digital black levels. Those three things. And this is the end result. This is what you're getting, you know. So I really hope that this really, really gives you that idea. I mean, I can do this all day long. I can turn off and on here. I'll do this for about 20 seconds here. Check this out. No HDR. HDR turned on. No HDR. HDR turned on. No HDR. HDR turned on. I mean, I think clearly you can see what I'm talking about. And if you have Oppo UDP 203, you can do this yourself. You guys can see this. What's great about Oppo UDP 203 is you can turn off the HDR on and off, and you can also turn off the 4K resolution. You can turn it off and bring it back to 1080p, so you can experience the resolution being stripped down to 1080p and then HDR being stripped down. I would show you the resolution, but the thing is, the camera cannot depict the resolution. Okay. The only thing the camera can depict, it's a little bit of a color gamut. So that's what you're seeing here. You're mainly seeing the color gamut, okay, from the HDR. Uh, Now, for those of you, look, I'm not making this video for those of you who already have 4K HDR and who know the difference between having the HDR and not having the HDR. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those who are still on the fence. I understand, that there's people out there who are still hesitant, like, do I really need it? There's old timers, old school individuals out there who don't know. So this video is really intended for them, and that's why I'm doing it like this, so I can show it to them in the basic terms. Well, this is what you're missing and this is what you're getting. Did I succeed in that by doing this video? Well, I don't know. you know my videos, they have a life of its own. Even 10 years from now, those videos will be there. People can look at it, and whenever you find this video, I don't know. That's the thing about internet. uh, they have a life of its own. And well, I want you just to understand what important key role high dynamic range and Dolby Vision plays, especially Dolby Vision plays with the movies. And of course, video games and everything else. But it's mainly the movies, honestly. It's really impossible for me to watch a movie without HDR. It is really, once you experience HDR, you really can go back. Uh, really, you can't go back. It's difficult once you know what's available. So, listen, guys, thank you all for watching this video. Thank you for sticking around for 22 minutes. I really appreciate it. And again, I hope that everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day. Uh, you know, always remember the Mother's Day and Father's Day. Uh, Parents are really, really important part in your life. Family is important part in your life. Everything else, it's just secondary. The television, the equipment, the video games, the sports, all this other stuff comes in comes in secondary. The most important part is your family, your loved ones. Remember, life is short. Always let them know you love them. Always let them know you love them. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all have a blessed Monday, and I'll see you soon. Take care.